The clock on the wall of the penthouse office read 11:47 p.m. when Victor Castellano pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner. The heavy oak door unlocked with a mechanical click that echoed through the marble hallway of his Manhattan headquarters. At 53 years old, Victor had built an empire that stretched from the docks of Brooklyn to the penthouses of Upper East Side. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly combed back, his Italian suit worth more than most people earned in a year. But tonight, something felt different. A heaviness hung in the air like the smoke from his Cuban cigar. Outside his window, New York City glittered like a kingdom he had conquered through blood, cunning, and an iron will. Victor Castellano was not just any crime boss. He was the last of the old guard, a man who still believed in codes, in loyalty, in the sacred bonds that held families together. His father had taught him that a man's word was his currency, and betrayal was a debt paid only in blood. But empires built on fear have fragile foundations. In the building's basement, 3 floors below the luxury and power, Rosa Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the fluorescent-lit hallway. Her dark hands gripped the cart's handle with the same steady determination that had carried her through 23 years of invisible labor. At 48, Rosa's face showed the marks of a hard life, deep lines around her eyes, graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, shoulders slightly hunched from decades of bending and scrubbing. She wore the same navy blue uniform she had worn for the past 8 years working for Castellano Enterprises, a company that officially dealt in real estate and construction. Rosa knew better. Everyone who worked in this building knew better. But silence was survival, and Rosa had mouths to feed. Her daughter Maria was in her 2nd year at Brooklyn College, studying nursing. Her son Carlos worked 2 jobs to help with the bills. Rosa's husband had died 7 years ago in a construction accident, and she had raised her children alone, 1 floor at a time, 1 toilet at a time, 1 invisible hour at a time. The people who walked past her in the hallways never looked at her face. She was furniture. She was wallpaper. She was nothing. And that invisibility was about to save a man's life. Rosa had a routine. Every night at midnight, she cleaned the executive floor. She started with the conference room, then the private offices, and finished with Victor's personal suite. She had learned to move silently, to keep her eyes down, to never be curious about the papers on desks or the conversations that sometimes continued when she entered a room. Invisible people hear everything. Invisible people see everything. But invisible people must never speak. Tonight, as she pushed her cart past the conference room, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. Light spilled into the hallway. Voices drifted out, tense, urgent, carefully controlled. Rosa slowed her steps, her instincts screaming danger. She should walk away. She should mind her business. But something in the tone of those voices made her pause. She recognized one voice immediately: Anthony Russo, Victor's right-hand man, his consigliere, his brother in everything but blood. They had grown up together in Little Italy, had built this empire side by side. Anthony was godfather to Victor's children. He was family. But the words Rosa heard next turned her blood cold. "We do it tomorrow night, during the signing. 1 bullet, clean and quiet. He'll never see it coming. 25 years we've played second fiddle to this dinosaur. Tomorrow the Castellano era ends and we take what's ours." Rosa's heart hammered in her chest. Her hands trembled on the cart handle. Another voice joined in: Marco De Luca, head of security, the very man responsible for Victor's safety. Then another: Frank Torino, the family's accountant and financial wizard. 3 men Victor trusted with his life were planning to take it. The meeting continued. They discussed details: a contract signing scheduled for the following evening, a shipment deal worth $40 million, documents that needed Victor's signature. When he leaned forward to sign, Marco would do it. 1 shot to the head. They would blame it on the Sorrentino family, their rivals from Boston. A gang war would erupt, and in the chaos, the 3 conspirators would seize control. Rosa stood frozen in the hallway, her mind racing. She thought of her children. She thought of her tiny apartment in Queens. She thought of the brutal efficiency with which men like these eliminated problems. If they discovered she had heard this conversation, They would kill her without hesitation. They would kill her children to erase any loose ends. She should run. She should forget everything she had just heard. What was Victor Castellano to her? A man who barely acknowledged her existence? A criminal who had blood on his hands? But Rosa Martinez had not survived 48 years in this world by being cruel or indifferent. Her mother had taught her that every life had value, that God placed people in certain moments for a reason. And as she stood in that hallway, hands shaking, heart pounding, she knew that despite every instinct screaming at her to protect herself, she could not let a man walk into his own execution. Not on her watch. Rosa waited until the voices faded and the conference room door closed completely. Her legs felt weak, her breathing shallow. She forced herself to continue pushing the cart, maintaining her routine, her mask of invisibility. But her mind was a storm of fear and impossible decisions. How do you tell a mafia boss that his most trusted men want him dead? How do you approach a man surrounded by walls of power and suspicion? Rosa had no access to Victor's private world. She cleaned his office, but always when he was gone. She existed in the shadows of his empire, never crossing into the light. The next morning, Rosa arrived at work with dark circles under her eyes. She had not slept. Every scenario she imagined ended badly. If she went to Victor and he did not believe her, he might think she was trying to manipulate him to extract money or favors. Men like Victor trusted no one, especially not poor cleaning women with convenient stories. Worse, if Anthony or Marco discovered she had spoken, her family would pay the price. But if she stayed silent, a man would die. And Rosa knew that silence was its own kind of murder. She decided to try the impossible. At 2 p.m., she took the service elevator to the executive floor during business hours, something she had never done. Her heart hammered as she stepped into the plush, carpeted hallway. Security cameras tracked her movement. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like prey walking into a lion's den. Victor's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, looked up from her desk with immediate suspicion. "Can I help you?" Her tone made it clear Rosa did not belong there. "I need to speak with Mr. Castellano. It is urgent." Rosa's voice trembled despite her efforts to sound steady. Patricia's expression shifted from suspicion to barely concealed contempt. "Mr. Castellano does not take meetings with cleaning staff. If there is a maintenance issue, submit a request through facilities management. This is not about cleaning. Please, it is a matter of life and death." Patricia stood up, her patience gone. "You need to leave this floor immediately, or I will call security. Do you understand? This is your only warning." Rosa felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She turned and walked back to the elevator, humiliation burning through her chest. Of course they would not listen. She was nobody. She was nothing. Her word meant nothing against men in expensive suits. But as the elevator doors began to close, a deep voice cut through the air. "Wait." Rosa's breath caught. The doors reopened. Victor Castellano stood in the hallway, having just emerged from his office. He had heard everything. His dark eyes studied Rosa with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the walls. "You said life and death." His voice was quiet, measured, dangerous. "Whose life? Whose death?" Rosa stepped out of the elevator, knowing there was no turning back now. The words came out in a whisper that would change everything. "Yours, Mr. Castellano. They are planning to kill you tomorrow night." The hallway fell into a silence so complete that Rosa could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Victor's expression remained unreadable, carved from stone. Patricia stood frozen at her desk, mouth slightly open. Two security guards had appeared from nowhere, hands hovering near their concealed weapons. Victor's eyes never left Rosa's face. "Come with me." It was not a request. Rosa followed him into his office, her legs barely supporting her weight. The door closed behind them with a finality that felt like a coffin lid. The office was massive, decorated with dark leather and mahogany, windows overlooking the city like a throne room surveying a kingdom. Victor walked to his desk but did not sit. He stood with his back to the window, arms crossed, studying Rosa as if seeing her for the first time. Speak. Rosa's mouth was dry. Last night, midnight, I was cleaning the executive floor. The conference room door was open. I heard voices. I heard them planning. She paused, gathering courage. Mr. Russo, Mr. DeLuca, and Mr. Torino. They are going to kill you tomorrow during the contract signing. Victor's face betrayed nothing, but something flickered in his eyes. Danger. Calculation. Go on. Rosa recounted every detail she could remember. The plan. The timing. The bullet. The blame placed on the Sorrentino family. The takeover. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke, fueled by the truth of what she had heard. When she finished, Victor was quiet for a long moment. Do you understand what you are accusing these men of? Anthony Russo has been my brother for 40 years. Marco has protected me for 15. Frank has managed every dollar I have ever made. Rosa met his eyes, refusing to look away despite her fear. I know what I heard, Mr. Castellano. I have no reason to lie. I have everything to lose by being here. Why tell me? Victor's question cut through the air like a blade. You could have walked away, kept yourself safe. Why risk your life for mine? Because I could not live with myself if I stayed silent. Rosa's voice cracked. Because my mother taught me that every life matters. Even yours. Something shifted in Victor's expression. For the first time, he truly saw her. Not as furniture. Not as invisible labor. But as a human being who had made an impossible choice. If you are lying to me, you understand the consequences? If I am lying, I deserve them. But I am not lying. Victor picked up his phone, pressed a button. I need full surveillance footage from the executive floor conference room. Last night, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Bring it to me immediately. He hung up and looked back at Rosa. We wait. And if you are telling the truth, if my brothers have betrayed me, then everything I have built stands on rotten ground. Victor's voice carried a weight that made Rosa's chest tighten. You may have just saved my life, or signed your own death warrant. We will know soon enough. If you are feeling the weight of this moment, take a second to subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next will change everything, and you will not want to miss a single word of this story. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Rosa sat in a leather chair that cost more than her monthly rent, watching Victor pace like a caged predator. When the security tech arrived with a laptop, Victor waved Rosa over. Watch with me. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The timestamp read 11:52 p.m. The conference room door opened, and 3 men entered. Anthony Russo, Marco DeLuca, Frank Torino. Victor's hand gripped the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles turned white. The tech enhanced the audio. Every word Rosa had reported came through the speakers with crystal clarity. Anthony's voice, cold and businesslike, laying out the execution plan. Marco confirming he would take the shot. Frank detailing how they would restructure the organization, how they would divide Victor's empire like vultures over a corpse. Victor's face transformed. The mask of control shattered, replaced by something primal. Rage, grief, betrayal so deep it seemed to hollow him out from the inside. He pressed pause on the video, his hand shaking. 40 years. His voice was barely a whisper. 40 years, and he was planning to put a bullet in my head. Rosa remained silent. There were no words for this kind of pain. Victor made 3 phone calls, each one brief, coded, efficient. Then he turned to Rosa. The signing is tonight at 8 p.m. They think I suspect nothing. He pulled open a desk drawer, removed a thick envelope. Inside this is $50,000 cash. Take it. Disappear. Take your family and go somewhere safe until this is over. Rosa stared at the envelope. It was more money than she had seen in her entire life. But something in Victor's eyes stopped her from taking it. You are going to confront them. I am going to handle this the only way men like them understand. Rosa thought of her children. She thought of the life that money could buy. But she also thought of the man standing before her, preparing to face the ultimate betrayal alone. You saved my life, Mr. Castellano. The least I can do is stand witness to the truth. Victor studied her with something that might have been respect. You would risk everything for a man you barely know? I already risked everything when I walked into this office. Rosa's voice was steady now. Whatever happens tonight, I need to see it through. Victor nodded slowly. Then you stay close to me, under my protection. If any of them even looks at you wrong, they answer to me. That night, the conference room was set for the signing. The $40 million contract sat on the table, awaiting Victor's signature. Anthony arrived first, all smiles and brotherly affection. Then Marco, professional and alert. Finally Frank, carrying his leather briefcase filled with financial documents. They had no idea that Rosa stood in the adjacent room, watching through a two-way mirror. They had no idea that 6 of Victor's most loyal soldiers were positioned throughout the building. They had no idea that their voices had been recorded, their betrayal documented, their execution warrant already signed. Victor entered the conference room, and the final act began. Victor sat at the head of the conference table with the calm of a man who had already won. Anthony poured whiskey into crystal glasses, the ritual of brotherhood they had performed 1,000 times. To family, Anthony toasted, his smile warm and convincing. Victor raised his glass but did not drink. To loyalty, the word hung in the air like a noose. Anthony's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. Marco shifted in his seat. Frank's hand tightened on his briefcase. Victor slid the contract across the table, but instead of signing it, he placed his phone in the center. With one tap, the audio recording began to play. Anthony's voice filled the room, cold and clinical. We do it tomorrow night, during the signing. One bullet, clean and quiet. The blood drained from Anthony's face. Marco's hand moved toward his weapon, but he froze when 6 armed men entered the room, guns drawn. Frank tried to stand, but a heavy hand on his shoulder forced him back into his chair. Victor stood slowly, his eyes moving from one traitor to the next. 40 years, Anthony. I would have died for you. I would have given you everything. All you had to do was ask. Anthony's mask crumbled. His hands trembled. Victor, let me explain. The business was changing. You were holding us back. We needed to evolve. So you decided to put a bullet in my head? Victor's voice was ice. You were going to murder me and blame the Sorrentinos? Start a war that would kill dozens of innocent people? Marco finally spoke, his voice defiant. This is the life we chose. Kill or be killed. You taught us that. I taught you loyalty, honor, family. Victor's fist slammed the table. I taught you that a man's word is everything. He turned to Frank, the quietest of the 3 conspirators. You managed my money for 20 years. You knew every account, every asset, every secret. And you were going to steal it all. Frank said nothing. His silence was confession enough. Victor walked to the window, his back to the men who had betrayed him. In the old days, this would be simple. 3 bullets, 3 graves. No one would ask questions. But Victor was tired. Tired of the blood. Tired of the cycle of violence that had consumed his entire life. He turned back to face them. You are dead to me. All 3 of you. You will leave New York tonight. You will never speak my name again. If I ever see your faces, if I ever hear that you have tried to contact my family or my organization, I will finish what you started. Do you understand? Anthony opened his mouth to protest, but Victor raised his hand. You are breathing only because a cleaning woman had more honor in her little finger than the 3 of you combined. She risked her life to save mine. She is worth 100 of you. Rosa watched from behind the glass as the 3 men were escorted from the building, stripped of everything they had built, exiled from the only world they had ever known. It was a mercy they did not deserve, but Victor had chosen a different path. 3 years later, Rosa Martinez stood in the lobby of Castellano Community Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provided scholarships, job training, and housing assistance to families throughout New York City. The building had been purchased and renovated with funds from Victor's legitimate businesses, a monument to second chances and redemption. Rosa was no longer invisible. She wore a tailored blue suit, her hair styled professionally, confidence radiating from her posture. The title on her office door read Director of Operations. She managed a staff of 45 people, oversaw a budget of $12 million annually, and had personally helped over 3,000 families climb out of poverty. Her daughter Maria had graduated nursing school with honors and now worked at Mount Sinai Hospital. Carlos had used a foundation scholarship to attend trade school and now ran his own electrical contracting business. The tiny apartment in Queens had been replaced by a modest home in a safe neighborhood with a yard where Rosa grew tomatoes and roses. Victor had kept his promise. The day after the confrontation, he had offered Rosa a choice. Take the $50,000 and disappear, or stay and help him build something meaningful. Rosa had chosen to stay, and together they had transformed Victor's guilt and grief into purpose. Victor himself had changed. He had slowly, carefully extracted himself from the criminal enterprises that had defined his life, transitioning his empire into legitimate real estate development and community investment. It had not been easy. There had been resistance, violence, threats from those who wanted to keep the old ways alive. But Victor had survived, and more importantly, he had evolved. On this particular afternoon, Victor walked into the foundation's lobby carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Rosa with a smile that had become genuine over the years. Board meeting in 20 minutes. Are you ready? Rosa took the coffee, returning his smile. Always ready. They walked toward the conference room together, an unlikely partnership forged in betrayal and sustained by mutual respect. Victor had learned that true loyalty could not be bought or inherited. It had to be earned. And the person who taught him that lesson was a woman he had once considered invisible. As they passed a wall covered with photographs of scholarship recipients, success stories, and community events, Victor paused. Rosa, I spent 50 years building an empire of fear. But what we have built together, this is the only thing I have ever created that I am truly proud of. Rosa squeezed his arm gently. Your father would be proud too. Not of who you were, but of who you became. The conference room filled with board members, community leaders, and the people whose lives had been transformed by the foundation's work. Rosa took her seat at the table, no longer in the shadows but in the light, her voice heard, her contributions valued, her worth undeniable. Outside, New York City continued its endless rhythm, a place where empires rose and fell, where betrayal and redemption danced in eternal balance, where a cleaning woman's courage had rewritten the ending of a story that should have ended in blood. And if this story moved you, if Rosa's journey from invisibility to purpose inspired you, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought, and subscribe to the channel because I have more incredible stories of courage, redemption, and unexpected heroes coming your way. Tell me in the comments what kind of story you want to hear next. Until then, remember that every person you meet, no matter how invisible they seem, carries within them the power to change everything.